In this class, we will study about arrow functions. Okay, so now we'll make another file over here, index15.js, and here we will see what are arrow functions. So basically, arrow functions was introduced in the ES6 version. Okay, when ES6 version was launched, these three and many more features came with the ES6 version. So now we'll discuss what are arrow functions. So when we write a normal function over here, suppose we write a function over here. So with the help of function keyword, we write function, and here we write some code inside this function that we want to execute. But when we write the same function with the help of arrow function, we can write like this: variable x equals to, then a parenthesis, then an arrow, then a curly brace. Okay, so this is the same code as this over here. So we have previously discussed about how do we write an arrow function. So this is the syntax of an arrow function. So you can see we have neglected this function keyword here. So it makes our code shorter. So here you can see, suppose what I will do is I will perform some function over here. Suppose here I will take two methods, two arguments over here, and I will return. I will add them a plus b over here. Suppose here I will take, or we will can also, so we have to call it. Okay, so here what we'll do is we will call in this paragraph. Okay, so we have to output the result in this paragraph. Suppose para dot inner HTML. So we are outputting this x function over here. So here we have passed two arguments inside this function over here. So we have to pass two parameters inside this function over here. So here you can see this 1 and 2 are same as a and b. Okay, so a is 1 and b is 2 over here. So we are passing two values inside this x function because we are taking two arguments inside this function. So let us comment this out and let us check. So what we'll do is we'll first change the path of our index file here. Now we are passing this x function inside this paragraph. So let us see what is the result over here. So we are getting 3 because we are adding these two values inside this function over here. So we are calling this function inside this paragraph. So this is the method. Here you can see this is the method. Like this we can call any function if we declare that function in the previous, like above over here. Okay, so we are calling this function x over here. So here if we don't pass any arguments over here, suppose I will pass an empty string hello world. So here, sorry, like this. So we are just passing a string that is hello world. So we don't need to pass any argument inside that function. So we can also neglect the when we are calling this function. So we can neglect the parameter inside that function. So now when we save it, the function will return the particular string that we return inside this function. Okay, so inside this function we are returning this string over here. So this is executed, this function is called. So here we have called that function. So the string means the code that is inside that function, so it will be executed here. Okay, so when we call a function, the code inside that function will be executed at that particular place where we are calling that function. Okay, so in short, this return hello world is printed over here. Okay, so we are calling this function over here. From here we are calling that particular function. So now we'll check the same result over here. Okay, here we'll comment this, comment out, will comment this, and now we'll cut paste over here. So what I will do is, here we'll return something, the same thing, suppose hello world, to check if this syntax works or not. So here we are doing the same thing, we are returning that particular string and we are calling that particular function from here. Okay, so let us check if it gives the same result or not. So we are getting the same result. So we can also use this arrow function instead of this normal function over here. So here in this arrow function, we can, if we have one line of code, okay, so suppose here we are returning only one line of code, so we can we can remove this return keyword from here, and we can also remove this curly brace over here. So we can write like this. Okay, so this makes our code more shorter now. So we are just using this function parenthesis here, then an arrow function, and then the result means what we have to return inside that function. So we are not using the return keyword. It is automatically understood by the JavaScript that we are returning this particular hello world over here. So we'll save it. Now let us check it is giving us the same result or not. So here you can see we are getting the same result. So you can see the difference between these two syntaxes over here. Okay, so here we are writing more code and here we are writing less code. So this is the main difference, that in arrow function, when we are using arrow function, we are using a much cleaner code than the normal function. So here we can also pass some parameters over here. Suppose I will pass a over here. Okay, so this particular a will be, here we'll write something, here we'll pass something. Suppose I will write Ankit over here. So it will take that particular value, this particular value from here. Okay, so we want to output this particular value inside this. So we'll just use concatenate a. Okay, just a minute, it will be outside. Plus a, like this. So we are outputting a dynamic value, means it is coming from here. Okay, so we are passing this argument inside that function, that is a, and we are calling that particular function inside this paragraph. Okay, and here we are giving the name of that particular, any name you can give. So we are just passing a parameter inside that function, and we are outputting the value of that argument over here. So let us check what we are getting here. So we'll refresh. So here you can see we are getting hello Ankit, because here you can see we are taking an argument over here and we are using that particular value over here, and this a is this Ankit over here because we are calling with this parameter over here. Okay, so we are calling this function with the help of one parameter, that is a over here, and this Ankit is removed. Okay, here we are passing an argument. So this is the normal functionality of a function. How do we use a function? We are just passing an argument over a function, and when we call that particular function, we have to pass that original value what we want to use, and we are just outputting that value here. Okay, so this is the normal case that happens with functions. Okay, so here if we have a single argument, we can also remove this parenthesis over here like this. So now when we save this, we'll get the same result. So you can see we are getting hello Ankit. So you can see we are not using more code over here. We are just using this particular single value, single argument. Then we are outputting that particular string, and then we are using adding this value over here. That is coming dynamically. So here we are using this plus sign over here to add a string and the particular argument over here. Okay, so this is the syntax of an arrow function. So here you can see we are writing the same thing in 3 lines, and here we are writing the same code in 1 line only. Okay, so this is the main reason, actually the shorter syntax. Okay, so in many cases when we use an arrow function and when we use a normal function, in some of the cases the result comes different. Okay, so when we use this keyword, so this keyword acts differently in arrow functions compared to the regular functions. So we'll take an example over here. Suppose so we'll comment this out over here, and we can take some example over here. Suppose I will take this example. I'll just comment this out over here. So it is returning something over here. Here what we'll do is we'll just cut it from here, and here we'll output this result over here. But here what we'll output is we'll output our this keyword over here. Okay, so we'll note the differences when we use a regular function. Here I will just use, we are just using a regular function. So we'll see both the cases. What is the result when we use a regular function, and what is the result when we use an arrow function over here. So we are just outputting the result, this keyword over here. Okay, we are just outputting this keyword over here. And now what I will do is, so now we'll add 2 events in order to see the differences. So first we will add our first event. So here we'll use window dot add event listener. We will study these add event listener in our later classes. Okay, so here what we'll do is we will add an event. Okay, so this is like on click, on button press, on key press, okay, on key down. So these are the events. Okay, so here we'll take our load event over here, and here what we want is we want to apply inside this function over here. Okay, so we'll just use x over here. Okay, so this is our first event over here, and now we'll apply this on our second, we'll apply our second event listener. Okay, so we'll just use document dot get element by id, and we'll target this particular button over here. Just a minute. Here you can see we'll target this button over here. So we will give an id over here, btn, and we'll remove this on click over here. We can also apply on click like this inside this button, but for here we are using the add event listener. Okay, so here we'll use btn, and now we'll apply add event listener, and when first here inside this add event listener, first we mention the event name, that is click. So here we are applying the click listener, and in this function we want to apply this click function, click listener. So here we'll use x over here. So here you can see we are adding 2 events over here. First is load and second is click inside this function. Okay, so when we are loading, we want to execute this function. So when the page loads, actually this means this function will be executed when the page loads for the first time. And here what we are doing is, when we click that particular button, we want to execute this function over here. Okay, and what we are doing here is, we are outputting the value of this. We'll just save it and let's see our result. So here you can see we are getting the result as object window. Okay, so the result is coming from here. Okay, so this is object. Here we are getting object window. Okay, so this window actually calls this function over here. Okay, so here we are getting the object window. Suppose here when we click on this particular button, so we are applying this click on this error handling button over here. Okay, suppose when we click on this button, you can see it is coming object HTML button element, means this function here. Okay, it is calling this function. When we click this button over here, it is calling this function over here. Okay, so here you can see we are outputting this means the owner of the function. When we are taking the help of an object, in earlier cases, when we are using this with an object, we refer this to the owner of the function. Means here uh, suppose variable obj equals to, inside here if we use this, so we refer this to the owner of the function, that is obj over here. Okay, so in these cases, we'll just remove this. Here this refers to the element that calls the function. Means here you can see the loading is done by our window over here. Okay, so window is loading actually. Okay, so we are calling this, means this is the element that calls the function. Okay, so this is the main element that is calling this required x function over here. So this value is coming as window over here. And in the second case, the this value refers to the button. So button actually calls the function. Okay, not this document over here. Okay, the button actually calls this function over here. You can see we are assigning the event listener inside the button over here. Okay, so this particular, here you can see, just a minute, object HTML button element. Okay, so this HTML button element refers to this here. Okay, so this value here is HTML button element. So here you can see, when we use a regular function, always keep in mind that this refers to that element that calls that function. Okay, here you can see this x is called by this window object over here. So this refers to this value is coming as window. And here in the second case, this button is calling this particular function over here. Okay, so this button is calling this function, this x function over here. So this value comes as HTML button element. So we can conclude like this: when we use a regular function, this always refers to the element that calls the required function. Okay, so this is the main thing. Okay, when we use a regular function, here we are using the regular function, not an arrow function. So here we are using the regular function. So this keyword here, this always refers to the element that calls the required function. Means here this window object is calling this required load this x function over here, and in this case this button is calling this X function over here. So this is the example when we use a regular function. But when we use a normal function, arrow function over here, suppose we'll just copy it from here and we'll just remove this code from here, and here you can, we'll just comment this out like this. Here we'll remove this output over here, because we aren't getting any output here, so we'll just remove this particular output. And now let us check what is the result. So we'll simply save it and let us check what is the result now. Here we'll just simply, so first we are getting object window. So this is the result of this first input over here in this result. So here we can say the required result is object window. Now when we, in our second case, we have to click that particular button. Now we'll see what is the difference. So here we'll see, click that button, and here you can see this is coming as an object window. In the previous case, when we use a regular function, the answer was coming as object HTML button element. But when we are using an arrow function, we are getting the window object. So why it is coming like this? Because when we use an arrow function, so here I will write, when we use an arrow function, this always refers to the owner of the function. Okay, so when we use an arrow function, this always refers to the owner of the function. So here you can see, in the previous case, here we are talking about this refers to the element that calls the required function. Okay, but here we can see the word changes. Okay, this refers to the owner of the function. Okay, so here in both the cases we are getting the object window. Okay, so here our window is the owner of that particular function. Here we are not getting the HTML button because here we are not in arrow function. This is not the case. This in the arrow function refers to the owner of the function, and here the owner is this particular window. So we are not getting the HTML button because the button is calling. Okay, here this function is called by this button only, but the answer is window object, because in the arrow function this always refers to the owner of the function. Okay, so here suppose I will do one more, apply one more event over here. Okay, now in the next line we'll just copy this particular code over here. We'll just apply another event over here. So here we'll just use our mouse enter event over here. We'll discuss in our later classes all the events. Okay, so here we are just adding an event. If we'll enter the mouse in that particular button, our required function will be executed, that is this X over here. So we'll just save it and let's see what is the result. We'll refresh it. So now it is coming window. If we hover or when we enter the mouse onto that button, our function is executed. Now it is giving us the same result, because here also we are the owner of the function, means the owner of this element. This refers to the always the owner of the function, means this function over here. So in all the cases here, when we use the arrow function, the owner is always the window object. Okay, but in the normal function, in the regular function, here we are getting HTML button, because in normal cases this always refers to the element that calls the function, but in arrow function this always refers to the owner of the function, that is the window object. Okay, so this is the main difference when we are using this in a regular function or in an arrow function. So you have to keep this thing in mind. Okay, so you have to use how to use this in a regular function or how to use in an arrow function. So if you want to use this functionality, so you can use a normal function. If you want to use this functionality over here, so you can use an arrow function. So you have to decide which function, which what things I want. So you have to use in that way. Okay. So these are the main differences when we are using regular function and arrow function. So this arrow function is also not supported on all the browsers. It is supported from Chrome 45 onwards and Internet Explorer 12 onwards. So these are the versions in which this arrow function is supported. So it is not supported on all the browsers. Now our next topic will be classes. So this ES6, when we are studying ES6, so this ES6 also introduced classes. Okay, so we'll use classes like this. Okay, so we'll use now our classes. So how do we use a class? So we'll simply initialize something with a class keyword over here. So like this, and here we can mention our class name to create a class. Suppose we can name anything, suppose class name. Okay, so this is the name of this particular class. Now we give a curly brace here. Inside this we have to provide a constructor. So it is important when you are using class, then always use a constructor. Okay, so always check the spelling of this constructor over here. Just give a parenthesis over here and just use a curly brace, and inside this you have to mention some code over here. So I will just write some code over here, and then you can provide any method over here. Okay, so you can perform some method over here like this, and you can mention the code over here. Okay, so you can also mention more than one methods. So suppose I will use method 1 over here, and here we can also use another method. So this is the syntax of class. How do we use a class? So we'll simply initialize the class by using this class keyword, and then we provide a class name. Then inside this we provide a constructor over here. So this constructor is compulsory when we are using this class over here. Then we provide some methods below the constructor. Now we'll take some example over here. So now here we'll just comment this out, and we'll take some examples. So here I will use a car class, and I will put a curly brace over here. Then I will use a constructor like this. Here we have to provide arguments over here. So suppose I want to use the name of the car and the year of the car, means like when the car has been manufactured or it is sold. Okay, so the year, suppose. So here we'll pass two arguments, that is name. You can name it as you want. Okay, you can name anything you want. So I'm just using a descriptive name, so it can define that what is the name of the car and what is the year, means manufacturing year or the selling year. You can mention the name according to that. So here we'll use our this keyword. So here when we are using objects, so this syntax is like when we use objects. So this is the same syntax as when we use objects. So in objects we have studied that this refers to the owner of the object. Okay, so here the owner is car. Okay, So what we want is we'll use this. This refers to the car. That is, this here refers to this owner. That is car. So we'll use this dot name. So this dot name is name of the car actually is equals to name. Okay. So we are initializing it. We are giving it a value of the car name as name. Okay. So next we'll use this dot year equals to year. Okay, so like this. So you can mention the, now we are mentioning the year of the car. Okay, so we are taking this parameter, taking this thing from this argument over here, and here this is the name of the car. Okay, so you can mention any name you want. Suppose car name like this. Car name. You can also mention like this. Okay. So I'm just using it as a common practice to use both the names like in the same way. Okay. So now what we'll do is always keep in mind when we call the when we create an object, always this constructor is called. Okay. When we create an object, this constructor is called first. Okay. Now we'll create an object. Okay, so we'll create an object by using new keyword. Okay, so we'll give any name over here, like my car equals to, so we'll use our new keyword in order to create an object. So new car means this car over here, the class name. Okay, so this is the class name over here, and here you can see when we call this, when we create this object, it will call this constructor method over here. Okay, so whenever we create an object using this new keyword, it always calls this constructor method. Okay, so here you can see we have passed two arguments over here. First is the name, so we'll provide a name of our car. Suppose it is Ferrari. Then second, we are using the selling year. Suppose, so suppose you can also give any year over here. So we have passed two arguments over here, so we have to give two parameters inside this car. Okay, when we are initializing, we are creating an object. When we are creating an object, so we have to pass the same parameters. Okay, so suppose when I will not use this 2018. Okay, so it will not, when we use this year over here, when we output this year, so we will not able to output that particular year because we aren't passing any parameter over here in the place of that particular year. So we'll use 2019 suppose. So now how do we output our this my car variable? So we'll just output in the same method like document dot get element by id, then we'll target our para. Okay, dot inner html equals to my car like this. Okay, so we'll just we'll comment this out over here. Now we are able to see we are using a class over here, class car. This is the class name. Then we are using a constructor over here. Then we are creating an object over here with the help of new keyword. So here we are passing two parameters because in the constructor we have passed two arguments over here. So here you can see this name over here is this name over here. This year is the same as this year. Okay, so here what it is saying is assign the car name as this name. Okay, this particular, so this Ferrari goes to this name over here, and this 2019 goes to this year over here, and from here it is coming here, and from this year it is coming into this year. So here you can see, so car name is actually Ferrari, car year is actually 2019. So now how do we access this? So what we want is we want to access the car name. Okay. So here we are outputting the whole object. Suppose here what we want is we want to output the name over here. So we'll simply use my car dot name like this. So let's save it and see what is the result. We'll just refresh it. So now you can see it is coming Ferrari because here we are passing Ferrari over here. So this goes from here to here, and this goes from here to here, and this year goes from here to here, and from here it is going to this year over here. Okay, so we are assigning the car name as Ferrari and car year as 2019. Suppose here we can also use like our my car dot year like this. So we'll just output our car name and car year. So you can see we are outputting our both the car names and our selling year of the car. Okay. So this is the basic syntax and how do we use a class and how do we output the result. So this is the basic syntax of using the class name. Now we will know how to add a method into this class name. Okay, so here you can see we are adding methods inside this class. So suppose I will add a method over here. Okay, so you can name anything. Suppose I will use a age method over here, and inside this I will write some code over here. So what we'll do is we'll just assign by using let over here, and then we'll use let date equals to new date. Okay, so we are just initializing the date. Now we will use this state. Okay, so how do we use that? We'll simply return. We want to know how many years old my car is. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll fetch out the current year from this date. So by using the get full year method we can extract the year from the particular date. Okay, so we'll first extract that year by the help of get full year, and we'll just minus the year. Okay, so this year over here. So like how many years here we are passing 2019. So I will take this year and will subtract from the current year. Okay, so here we can access this dot year because we are inside this class over here. So this will refer to the owner means this car over here. Okay, if we will suppose here we'll write this code over here outside the outside this class, then we'll not able to access this using this keyword. Okay, because this don't refer to car over here. Okay, when we are inside this class name, so now we can access this car with the help of this keyword over here. Okay, so we are accessing the year property of this car class. Okay, so we are passing returning the like the subtracted year means the how many year old our car is. Okay, so we'll just remove this. So we'll just output our this method over here. So how do we output our method? We'll use our my car. So how do we access our property? By using the class name and dot and then the property name. So like this we'll use my car, then the method name and just sorry age, and you have to when you are calling certain methods, so you have to use parentheses over here. Okay, so like this you are using like you are calling that particular function over here. So you are calling this age function over here. So when we call this function, so this particular block of code will be executed. Okay, so let's see now what is the result. So I'll save it. We'll simply refresh. So now it is getting 1 because our current year is here. Our current year is 2020. Okay, and we are mentioning year here is 2019. So 2020 minus 2019 is 1. Okay, suppose here I will reduce it to 2008 suppose. So now let's check our result. So here you can see now it is coming 12 because our current year is 2020 and we are extracting we are mentioning this year as 2008. Okay, so we are passing the parameter as 2008. So it is subtracting 2020 minus 2008, that is 12. So in this way we can access our age method over here. So you can pass any methods or one method or more than one method. Okay, it is according to your requirement. So we are passing this age method inside this class. Okay, so in this way we can use our classes. So I will once again uh, explain you how do we use classes. So we'll simply use our class keyword and then we'll use our class name. Okay, then when we initialize it with our class name, we'll provide a constructor method over here. So it is the most important method over here. Okay, so it is compulsory to give. Okay, inside this we provide this particular, we initialize the property name of this particular class name. Okay, so here inside this constructor we pass arguments. Okay, suppose what we want is like suppose here if it will be person. Okay, so here you can see now we have changed the class name to person, and here I will suppose change it to name and age. Okay, so this what we want is we want this dot name means what we want is the person dot name. Okay, so here it will actually be called as name, and here suppose I will change it to this dot age, so it should be the age. So these two name and age is coming from these parameters over here, these arguments over here. Okay, and these two arguments are are coming from over here. Okay, when we are calling that particular function, so we have to give something in order to output some result. Okay, so this is the process. How do we pass uh, this parameter into this argument over here, and from here it is passed to this constructor value. Okay, so this is a normal syntax, and then we can use any method over here and we can call this method inside. If we want to output that particular method, we want to access that particular method, we can call by using the class name and then a dot and then the method over here. So always when we are calling a particular function, always give a parenthesis. So here we can, when we will call this particular function, so this block of code will be executed, that is inside that particular function. So this is it. So this is the common use cases of like our ES6. Okay, so ES6 provides us let, const, arrow functions and classes. Okay, so these four things are commonly used, and this classes is also not supported on all browsers. It is supported from Chrome 49 version onwards, Edge 12 version onwards. In Firefox it is supported from 45 onwards. In Safari it is supported from 9 version onwards. In Opera it is supported from 36 version onwards. So it is not supported from start. Okay, it is supported in a later version. Okay, so we have learned much of our JavaScript. Okay, means how do we write a JavaScript? So the common things we have learned. Now we'll learn how to debug our code. Means if we get an error, So how do we solve that? Okay, so we learn how to debug our code, how to solve our errors. So our next topic will be code debugging. So we'll make another file over here. Just a minute, I will have to. Okay, so our next method will be code debugging. Okay, so when we write our code, okay, so these are some of the common cases when we'll write, suppose long codes, so error comes. Okay, so in every, like when we write some code, okay, so error comes. Okay, every time error comes. So how do we solve that? So there are certain methods actually. So to solve that particular, so we have to set a breakpoint. Okay, suppose after every breakpoint, suppose we know that here that particular error will come. Okay, so we'll first console log. Actually, I will show you how to be console log. So this inspector, okay, so these are the developer tools. So we'll go to console and we'll just console log that particular result. So suppose I will tell you with an example. So what we'll do is, here I will simply give a equals to 5, b equals to 6, c equals to a plus b, like this. And now what we want is, we will just console log that particular result, this C result over here. So in order to know whether the result is coming or not, then after that we will output it in our result. Okay, output it in our main browser. So we'll just use this case over here and let's see what is the result. So we'll refresh. So here just a minute, we haven't linked our index16.js. So first we'll link our index16.js, and now when we output this, so here we are getting 11. Okay, so this is coming from index16.js. 5 plus 6, 11. So we are console logging the particular result. So you can console log anything, okay, any result you want. Suppose after every step, suppose we have a long code, suppose like here we have certain methods. Okay, so what we want is, we want to console log the date over here. So suppose here I will console log the date over here. Okay, so what we are doing is, first we are initializing the date, and whether what we want is, we want to see what is the date coming. Okay, so we can console log this particular variable over here, because this date is stored in this variable, so we have to console log this date. First we'll change index 15 here. We'll change the path over here, index15.js, and let's see what is the result. So here car is not defined actually. So we will, just a minute, I will use this car here. Let's see it works or not. My car.age is not defined. Okay, okay. So what we'll do is, we will use here over here, here over here. Okay, so like this. The result. So here you can see, we can, what we are doing is, we are just console logging that particular thing, and we are taking help of this error over here. So here you can see my car.age is not defined. So here what we'll do is, here we are getting some error. My car.age is not a function. So here you can see, we are getting the required error. My car.age is not a function. So we are having some problem here, because so we have to search for that particular error. So my car.age, okay, so it is coming from here, my car. So here we are initializing this age as year. Okay, so we have to change this particular year because we are passing year into this over here. What we want is we don't want the age, we want the year actually. Okay, so we'll just save it and let's see it works or not. So here you can see we are console logging the particular date over here. So our date is coming over here. Now we can do our next step, means we can use the particular date. Okay, so in order to see something whether the result is coming or not, we console log that particular thing and see in our console. Okay, so if we'll remove this particular thing over here, our console log will be removed. Okay, so now it is empty. So in this way we can use at every points. Okay, suppose any result is coming, so we can use our console log and check the particular result, and then in the next step we can use that particular result. So we can check by using the console log. So in different browsers different debugging tools are present. So inside in Chrome we have our developer tools, so it can be opened by using F12. Okay, or we can also go to our menu. Okay, and here we can go to our more tools and choose developer tools. So now you can see this is our console. Okay, here we have different options. So you can see first is element, so this is the HTML that will be shown. Okay, so from here we can also change our result, and when we refresh this result will be back to back to the default stage. Okay, so from here suppose we can change this particular line. Okay, suppose Java hello Java. Okay, so now here you can see our this particular line has been changed. Okay, so this is temporary. If we refresh this page, this will return to its default form. Okay, so let's see. So now it is returned to its default form. So this inspector tools is just for checking something. Okay, so for inspecting, so we have our console state, console log, then we have sources, network. So when you will go deep into this JavaScript thing, so you will able to know all these features. How do we use all these features over here? Okay, so for debugging, this is the most commonly used elements and console. Okay, so these two are the most commonly used tools. So this is the case. How do we use that particular developer tool in Chrome? But in Firefox, how do we do that? So we'll just go on to our menu. Then from there we select web developer, and from there we use our option that is web console. Okay, so this is the case in Firefox. And how do we use in Opera? So we'll go to our menu, then from there we'll go to our developer option. From developer, then we'll go to our developer tools, and from there we can use our the particular console. If we want to use console, then we can use select the console option over there. So different browsers, different like different options are coming. Okay, so we have to know every step. Okay, how do we use that particular developer tool in every browser? So in this class we learned how do we use our classes and how do we debug our code. Okay, so these are the two. This is the most important. How do we debug our code? Okay, everyone can write code, but everyone can't debug the particular code. Okay, so this is the most important thing. How do we debug our code? Okay, so we'll move to our next topic in our next lecture. We'll keep this these two topics in this lecture only.